You're watching BionicDance. Don't run on automatic, instead, please think.
Some people will say that they're atheists simply because they say there is no evidence for the existence of God. But I don't think that is a good reason to be an atheist.
That is the best reason to be an atheist. If there's no evidence for something, but you believe in its existence anyway, that is, at best, self-delusion. A good atheist is one who is actually willing to accept the existence of a God, provided the necessity of faith is eliminated. Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. For once, we have a theist whose reasons for belief in God and rejection of atheism are not based on Pascal's wager. Or, at least, he doesn't bring it up as one of them in this video. I'm sure there's others like him, but it seems these days as though they're few and far between.
Let's say there were no evidence for God. That wouldn't show that God did not exist or that atheism was true. All it would show is that we should be agnostics.
Another one who thinks the common use definitions of atheist and agnostic are the correct ones to use when conveying these points. An atheist is someone who believes in no gods. They may reject the idea, saying God does not exist, but as long as the number of gods they believe in is 0, they're an atheist. An agnostic is someone who lacks information, or even one who thinks the existence of a god is unknowable. I'm an atheist because I'm an agnostic. I have no evidence for the existence of a god, therefore I do not believe. But let's suppose the colloquial definitions of these words are the right ones. How many gods do so-called agnostics believe in? Is it more than none? Believers have failed to prove their case, and it's because they have no evidence for God's existence. Whether someone is an atheist or an agnostic makes no difference.
For example, there's really no good evidence that there are aliens or extraterrestrial life. But the fact that there's no good evidence for aliens doesn't show there are no aliens anywhere in the universe.
No evidence for alien life, you say? We have far more evidence of that than we do for a god. For one thing, life doesn't require anything but the material of which the universe is composed. For another, we've found Earth-like worlds outside of our solar system well suited to the existence of life. By contrast, everything we have for God is ancient fairy tales and unsubstantiated claims of miracles in the modern world for which a God would not be necessary, entirely possible through natural, mundane means. Fortuitous events, perhaps, but attributing them to a God's involvement is a huge, baseless leap in logic, a perfect example of confirmation bias.
However, I think there are good reasons to think God exists. For example, there's a universe that doesn't have to exist, but does.
There are a lot of things that don't have to exist but do. You, for example. Or a god. There is nothing we've ever found that could not have existed unless some magical power, god or otherwise, is required. A god does not have to exist either. Just because something exists when it is not necessary doesn't then suggest that something else had to make it come about intentionally.
As well as the universe that came into existence from the finite past.
Finite past, you say? The universe as we know it now may have had a finite past, but more and more we're finding that there was definitely something prior to the Big Bang jump-starting our current living conditions. And it wasn't a god.
A universe that has finely tuned physical laws that can only be designed by a designer.
Finely tuned, you say? Finely tuned for what exactly? Don't say life. Life adapted to its environment, not the other way around. The fine-tuning argument also assumes that carbon-based life is the only kind that may exist. There are many arguments for and against so-called fine-tuning, and, if indeed the universe is fine-tuned, its cause or source. To use this as an argument for a god's existence when it is so inconclusive is ignorant and logically fallacious at best, dishonest at worst.
And a universe that has an objective moral law that came from an objective moral lawgiver.
I've made a double-wide buttload of videos over the years about how and why morality cannot be objective. But to sum them up, morality is an idea, an ideal, and it can only exist as such, as a subjective thought process. Even if it is written down, those stains on paper only have meaning because we've given them such, and a god is no exception. Morality cannot be objective because it cannot exist without living minds to perpetuate it, and thus, by definition, is subjective. And therefore, morality is an opinion about what what constitutes proper behavior, and every individual carries within their own head a variation on what is expected. Even if each person's moral code is extremely similar to any other's, there will always be subjective differences somewhere.
So I think that in order to be an atheist, you'd have to show these 4 reasons for God fail.
Done. Next.
And also, there are good reasons to think God does not exist.
There are good reasons to not think a God does exist, that people who say such a creature is real cannot justify their assertion, and therefore it can be discarded, at least until they correct this deficiency in their argument. That's plenty. If a God was real, you could show him, her, it, or them to us without demanding faith, which every deity-based religion does when asked pointed questions about their God's existence for which they realize they have no answer.
And in my book, Answering Atheism,
Yeah. The only person on my channel who gets to whinge for money because they made something for public consumption is me. At least I'm giving mine away for free if people want it. Go away. I'm done with you. Not rating and subscribing has been found to cause obesity, acne, and male pattern baldness in laboratory rats.
Yeah, whatever.
Don't let this happen to you. Be sure to rate and subscribe.